You're most welcome back to Matchbook's US Golf Special, hot on the heels of the PGA Championship. It's a bit of a come down this week, but not the worst kind of come down. We've had way worse post-major hangovers than the Charles Schwab Challenge that I am going to refer to as the Colonial National Invitation from here on.
I like that.
I don't really give a shit about the sponsors. It's not like
good.
We don't have to worry about Charles Schwab, whoever the hell he is. You guys will know who he is. Joined, as ever, by Director of Content with BetSports, Mr. Andy Molitor, at the bottom of your screen and top of the screen, as ever, co-host of the For Profit Podcast, Mr. James Mazzola. Andy, to you first, sir. One really good outright selection from you last week. You only gave us the one. 91.0 Louis Oosthuizen. I'm kind of disappointed that you didn't have Phil at 450.0 that was available on Matchbook. But in your defense, Oosthuizen 91.0 traded as low as 3.5, 4.0 at Matchbook over the weekend. So anybody who had that position was able to cash out and get a pretty good position. Did you do that, though? Did you cash out? Did you get a good position?
No, but when I do take longer outrights like that, I do take some top 10, top 20, like automatically, just because it's like, oh, what if I'm really right about this guy, but not quite right enough? And that never feels good to have a big outright, not quite get there. But yeah, like you said, anyone who can take advantage of your exchange, you can just swap your way out of that and kick your feet up and laugh all the way to the bank on Sunday, just and cheer for Phil if you really wanted to. But yeah, Louis played great. If he'd have putted a little better, he'd have probably won. But yeah, it's always great to see a big outright, even in contention like that.
Yeah, and we've got cash out of Matchbook too, so you didn't even have to go and press the lay button. There was that one button you could just cash out and take your profit. JD, how was it for you? Golf was obviously the big winner with Phil Mickelson's win, 50-year-old major champion. Great to see it.
Yeah, when you got a guy like Phil coming down the stretch, and then obviously Brooks, who's one of the most popular guys, and people just love him as well. So couldn't have been a better Sunday for golf in general. And I'm sure the ratings actually show that, because everyone I know was watching, and I feel like Twitter was on fire. 50 years old, winning a major, it gives you, as we all age a little bit, gives us hope that our best days are not behind us to a certain extent. But the golf course was perfect, man. It was so fun to watch. I watched more of that golf tournament than I have any major for a long time, because it was beautiful. The golf was perfect. The wind was a factor, but not like ridiculous. They had to play it, but it was still somewhat scoreable. And then obviously Sunday was awesome. Brooks faded a little bit. Looked like he just ran out of gas. And I mean, that Phil story is one of the best ones we'll see in golf history.
Yeah, absolutely is. Talk to me about the Colonial in Fort Worth, in Texas. Bit of a ball striker's paradise, this one, Jetty.
Yeah, moving on to, this week, Colonial, one of the courses that we've seen on the rotation since the beginning of time. You have like Torrey, you have, Pebble on the West Coast out here, Riviera, you have Murfield, Jack's Place. So we have plenty to work with course-wise. This is a short course. It's a par 70, only 2 par 5s, and they actually play really difficult par 5s. Yep. One of them is not even reachable. It's just like the dog legs are just impossible to grab into, and then the other one is a long one that is very difficult. Strange course in that you could be in the fairway and still not be able to get to the green or attack a pin. Very positional based. I remember watching last year on one, if you're on the right side, you have a big ass tree hanging in front of you, and the pin is back right. You can't get to it. So position off the tee, and then obviously, as we saw last year, the very first tournament back from COVID, ball striker's paradise. You had Xander, you had Morikawa, and you had Berger, 3 guys who absolutely hit the hell out of it, competing for that title last year. It was a great tournament. So, it's going to play difficult. I'm looking at anywhere from 13 to 15. I understand there's been some rain, so it may play soft. They may play it up, which will allow for better scoring. But, a course that we're used to, and it should be a good week.
I remember that last year. That feels like 2 years ago. Yeah. The excitement of getting live golf back. I can remember the handle at Matchbook was through the roof. Just people, just the excitement. All those rare is wonderful. And then you see those scenes of filling the crowd on Sunday night, and it's amazing how long we've come in over 12, 13 months. All right, let's get into matchups. 99 matchups available at matchbook.com. 99 problems, but I can't say the rest. But yeah, 99. The guys are taking 4 each. Andy, first to you, mate. Top of the betting, Jordan Spieth in the outright market. Morikawa, second favorite, and he's the dog in this one. And you like him to beat Jordan Spieth over the weekend.
Yeah, you guys might be hanging the best price on this if you want Morikawa. I'm seeing some different stuff around the market, but yeah, at 2.09 plus 109 American, I definitely like him as a dog, like you just talked about. that we came back from COVID. He played well there. I don't know if that was, I guess you could call it maybe his coming out. His real coming out was probably, Workday and then Harding. Like those were massive over the summer. But, obviously both top players at the moment. You can look at the outright odds, but the way I'm weighting it this week, I don't think Jordy should be a favorite. I actually have Morikawa as a small favorite here. And I mean, it goes without saying, and James has belabored this for the better part of a couple of years, but it started with he's starting to become one of the best iron players on tour. Now he is the best iron players on tour. I downweighted off the tee. I downweighted driving distance with some of these, being a shorter course. And I did take a look at more accuracy off the tee and some of the things you can do with that. And Morikawa does have a clear advantage in that metric, heading up against Spieth here. You don't need to bomb it. It's not the longest course. There's 2 fewer par 5s, but these, skinny fairways, some punishing rough. And like James said, when he was talking about the course tree lined, I hate to ever compare this to RBC because it's completely different. But just like you get that in some of those shots there where it's like, oh man, there's just trees overhanging this fairway. You can have a nice drive. It can be on the fairway and you don't have a straight shot at the pin. There's a bunch of dog legs here and you do need to be accurate with where you're putting your tee shots here. So I'm going to, fade or take a guy who's a little more accurate with his tee shots. And, Collins putting, little suspect here, but it is bent grass. Naturally, he's going to be better on bent grass. Everybody's better on bent grass. And like I just alluded to, Harding Park, Muirfield Village, those are bent grass greens. He can play well. He can get his putting going on a surface like this and win. So, and Jordan's already won in Texas this year. I can't say anything bad about him. This is a price play for me.
JD, Andy kind of touched on it there. He's putting here at this venue. I was just thinking about this. You must have been on him last year when he missed that putt and left Daniel Berger back in it. You were on him, obviously.
So yeah. He had a 5-footer to win the tournament. He shanked it after just an absolute amazing wedge shot into 18. Yeah. So what I will say is I'm not on Morikawa this week for outrights, but this is the kind of situation where you can take him in its head-to-heads and still, look, if he top 5s or he wins the golf tournament, if you have 4 or 5 different head-to-heads, when you include with a top 5 in the top 10 market, you can get almost to where you would pay out if you had him outright. So that's what I'm going to do this week. I will have him exposure to him in everything because I'm not going to pay the 14-1 price for him to win this tournament. Instead, I'm going to try to, just find the derivative markets and take advantage of those, expecting him to play well this week.
Yeah, I think he's involved in about 5 matchups at matchbook.com. JD, stay with you here for a second. Billy Horschel to beat Justin Rose, fading Rose again. Like to see that 1.92 and -109 at Matchbook. Horschel's got an average finishing position about 30 there, but his consistency is kind of building up the last couple of weeks. He's made the last 4 cuts as well.
Yeah, and we talked about Rose a little bit last week, and just he's not striking the ball well at all. Man, he gained 11 strokes putting, and I know Andy was on a matchup. 11 strokes putting on a week is a wild number. Hit it like absolute shit. I mean, he lost strokes on approach, lost strokes around the green. He did gain a little off the tee, but when you have, in a route to an 8th finish, so when we see 8th, we're like, oh my gosh, he's playing really well. I mean, he missed the cut at the Valspar. The Masters is one thing. 54th in Mexico, and then missed the cut to RCM. So we haven't seen him a ton, but basically he has to gain 6-7 strokes putting to be anywhere near a cut made because he's just hitting it so poorly. When we look at Billy Horschel, a guy that I have actually, I've been fading for the better half of this golf season, he's starting to come around with the striking, and that's what he had done previously. He's always been a really solid ball striker. He's a weird putter. Like, it really bothers me watching him putt. His routine is just like, it's like gut wrenching. He's just, the way he sets up to it, it's just weird. But he putts well, so I like that. And I feel like his floor is just a lot higher than Rose, especially on this track. It almost seems like Rose is in that stage of his career where he's only gearing up for majors, played well last week, played well at the Masters. All of his other finishes outside of major tournaments are just more or less bad. So I'm going to continue with that. We obviously have, U.S. Open coming up soon, so I probably won't be fading him going into the U.S. Open. But, when I look at Horschel, gained across the board last week at the PGA. Again, like you said, had made 4 cuts in a row, including a second at the WGC Mexico this year. So a guy who's just really a solid all-around game at this point. And Rose is so dependent upon making every single putt that he looks at to make a cut, even let alone, be in a top 20, top 30 position. I'm just going to go ahead and fade that and hope that the putter slows down just a little bit. All
right. Like to see it. Right, Andy, back to you. Matt Wallace been in good form as well. He's like top 20 finishes the Wells Fargo and Texas Open back in April, and made his cut the last 5 tournaments he's played. And he's playing Ryan Palmer, and he's a good price, closer to even money here, 1.98 minus 102. What's the case here for the Englishman?
Yeah, like you said, Wallace is in fine form right now. I like him. I like this price quite a bit. I make him quite a bit bigger favorite here. And just Palmer was a guy I'd been backing maybe a few weeks back, 3-4 weeks, I think, ago. And his stats, when I'm taking some samples of short term versus long term, I'm seeing a bit of a downward trajectory. And I don't know if it's all just based on the difficulty of some of the tournaments, the difficulty of the fields he's been in. Like it's when it's going downhill in every stat, I'm just like, man, this is a guy I have to look at fading. If he comes up, he made the list for fades right away. If he comes up against a guy like, it turned out perfect. I like Wallace. I like his form right now. And it's at this price, it was certainly a play. So Palmer miscut last week after a couple of middling results. He had a really rough Sunday at Valero. It dropped him down into that spot where we need a name for that. Not just DFL, but like when you end up in that, when you make the cut, and you end up with end up in the 60s or 70s. It's like there does need to be, because he's done that a few times. Or he dropped down into the bottom 5 of the cut makers, what have you. So, and like you said, Wallace on the other hand, a couple of top 10s in his past 5s. He had a third at Valero down in Texas, in addition to another top 20. And when it comes down to maybe another reason I'm fading Palmer, he is a bit of a bomber. It's not a course that requires that. If he's going to be a long hitter and he's giving up accuracy for length, you can't just say that about everybody who hits the ball a country mile off the tee. Like, oh, you're just hitting the piss out of it and you're giving up accuracy. But it kind of does become true when you see how some of these guys hit it, especially a place here with skinnier fairways. We talked about, was it last week we were having like 50-yard fairways?
Yeah, they're big last week.
Yeah, the average is like 27 here. Like there's some very thin fairways. I don't want a bomber who's giving up accuracy for length. So, and the numbers do read that way. He's not great in fairways gained, greens and regulation gained. And if he is missing green, his around the green and scrambling numbers are pretty effing rough too. So I wonder if he'll be around this weekend. So I like this one to cash on Friday. No matter, just Wallace make the cut. This is a Wallace to make the cut bet.
Yeah, and it's going to be shorter than that, surely. Yeah, but he's been a mixed bag. Palmer, that is, around there. 6 visits, 3 missed cuts, the last 6. So, yeah, he can either go well, get into the weekend, but he may just be done by Friday. I like those ones on Friday. JD, Matthew NeSmith to beat Brendan Todd. It's a big price here, 2.24 plus 124. I was looking it up. He's ranked 8th on tour for strokes gained approach, which is pretty good stat, giving some illustrious company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to go back to Palmer real quick. This is like his home tournament. So he has this is like his home course. This is where he plays. So there's a lot of pressure on him playing in this golf tournament. And then the guy who just makes the cut in DFLs, I think we just call that dude, he's just out here cashing a check, because that's all he did, right? He just cashed a check and then he pretty much mailed it in for the rest of the weekend. So moving on to this little, where we're at here. So a couple things. So Todd, I call him Todd. He will absolutely lose strokes on approach this week. He's done so in the last 10 golf tournaments. Okay. He will absolutely gain in fairways. He's very accurate off the tee. So fairways gained, you take the average amount of fairways hit. If you hit more, you gain a fairway. If you hit less, you lose in that statistic, right? So he will absolutely gain in fairways. Here's the thing. NeSmith also gains in fairways hit, right? So when they are in the exact same position, one guy will lose strokes on approach. One guy has gained strokes on approach. Like you mentioned, he's 8th in strokes on approach this week or this year. So I like, again, we're at Ball Strikers course. If they have the same amount of fairway accuracy, I'm absolutely loving a guy who is a very much better ball striker than Todd. And we're getting him at plus prices. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Todd is a great putter, so his scrambling ability and his putting ability will be solid. But look, again, if he's not gaining 5-6 strokes putting, NeSmith is going to have way more birdie opportunities on a golf course where, if you're hitting the ball, if you're hitting greens, and the greens are relatively small, but if you're hitting the greens, you're going to give yourself a chance at birdie. So NeSmith at a plus price here, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Again, Todd, course, suits him from off the tee standpoint, but he's no better than NeSmith off the tee. So I'm going to go ahead and take the ball striker. And again, NeSmith is not like a poor putter. He's not great. He's pretty much average by tour standards. But the advantage he has with his iron game, we should be able to get him. I like him this week, even as like a top 30, top 40 kind of guy. So,
and
that's kind of my guy.
He ranks really high in greens and regulation too, so that's probably another one to be looking at. All right, 4 matchups left, but before I get into that, as I was saying, there are 99 of these at Matchbook. That is a hell of a lot. That's actually one of our shorter ones this week, because we normally have like 120 or something. So yeah, I don't know what's going on. If you do want to get involved in these and other sports, you can sign up at matchbook.com today and get 0% commission on all sports for 30 days. That'll bring you into the Euros as well. And, of course, the US Open coming up in the next couple of weeks. Enter bonus code INSIGHTS to avail of that offer. Generally speaking, on the exchange, you get the best price anyway. But you're only going to get the best price using this bonus code INSIGHTS on that. All right. Where are we at now? Andy, back to you, sir. Scotty Scheffler to beat Patrick Reed, 2.26 plus 126. I'll be honest, this is the one I looked at and I was like, ooh, this is kind of brave, because Reed has a really solid record at the Colonial there. So what's the angle there? There's obviously some way in.
Yeah, I didn't know how much I wanted to weigh course history. I usually don't. And then especially last year being just, starting off the break and being kind of a weird spot. And, Reed in general, it's kind of scary fitting. He's playing well. He has some really good results. These are two really good golfers. If you look across their stats across the board, very similar. Reed's been putting really well. Reed has shot up leaderboards with his putting. And just this is getting in the weeds a little bit. I know JD kind of went over some stats that we don't usually maybe touch on too, but this course has 10 holes that dogleg right and only 3 that go left. And like we said, like I played it. I played it on Nintendo. I looked at the map.
You're basically a member there.
Yeah, I'm basically a member. I'm sitting there tracing the map, making the tick marks. There is a lot of right turns. And you can go look at, missing fairways to either side, and Scotty is second best in the field as far as fewest misses to the right. If you miss off to the left here, and the what do you call it, rough is punishing, but if you miss off to the left, you still might have an open shot to at least get up to the apron or close to the green. If you're missing off to the right, you might be punching out, you might be absolutely laying up. So kind of a weird stat I ended up finding. Somebody mentioned it last week for the course, and I started digging into that a little. So, but yeah, like I said, Scheffler stats right up there with Patrick up and down the board, except for putting. Reed's gains on the field on his greens and all but one tourney this year. So hopefully the bent grass just kind of evens things out a little here, and it is a bigger price. So, Scotty doesn't have quite the measure of success Reed has had in his career, obviously, or this year, but he did have a nice outing last week. He top 10, and you're getting $1.25 on this guy, so I'm taking it.
Did have a good week. Joint 8th. Another guy joint 8 last week. Willie Z, or one of our favorites on the show. Will Zalatoris to beat Sung Jae Im at 1.87 minus 115. Yeah, Willie Z, he just turns up for the majors, doesn't he? He's just a great guy. What are we thinking here? So is it a price play, or is it just Willie Z? Because he kind of strikes me as more the bomber type too. And will that really kind of work around here? But then again, we looked at last year, a lot of these bombers just went over those trees and it's just to hell with it.
And Willie Z, a big game hunter. It's only a matter of time until he takes one down. He's a Dallas guy, so you got to assume he's somewhat familiar with this golf course. But look, we think of him as a bomber. In reality, he's slowly becoming in that upper echelon. He's getting into that upper echelon of ball strikers. 8.2 strokes on approach at the PGA. Byron Nelson, 9.5 strokes gained on approach. I mean, there are golfers who have no chance to get that number. They could play a million rounds and never get to 9.5 on approach. So, again, very good off the tee where he struggles. And he looks like he's never seen a putter before sometimes. Like, his stroke is so bad. And if he could ever just get that to zero, kind of like a Morikawa, I'm basically in love with guys who just strike the shit out of it and can't putt. Like, I can't quit them. They're like the crazy redhead, right? Like, I cannot quit those kind of people. So if we look at Willie Z, if he could just break even putting, I mean, again, last week he broke even and he was 8th. The week before he lost 4.3 strokes putting and he was 17th. I feel like a top 20 is basically the floor for him right now because he's such a good iron player. And if we're looking at position off the tee, we don't have to hit bomber drives, and it just becomes who has the best iron game. I mean, right now, of this field, besides Morikawa and JT, I would put Willie Z in that second echelon of golfers, and he's nipping on their heels when it comes to iron play. And look, Sung Jae is a guy that I back all over the place. I prefer Sungjae at really difficult golf courses where his all-around game can kind of shine. He's a guy who's not great at anything, but is really good at everything, good around the greens. I like more difficult golf courses where his chipping can take over, where his putting can take over, because he's not super good at just absolutely. Like a stat that I like is opportunities gained. How often do you hit it within 15 feet of the pin? He's not very high. He's middle of the pack here. Where if you go with Willie Z, way high. He's in the top 10 in that stat. So a course like this where there are going to be birdies, where you're going to have to flag some irons. I'm not a big Sungjae guy. I make this price just a little bit higher. And again, I love Sungjae, but his all-around game is a better fit for other golf courses. Whereas here, Willie Z's iron play should be able to be able to distance himself from Sungjae. And honestly, the most of this field.
All right, horses for courses type of that. Could not agree more with that crazy redhead statement too. I'm on board with that one.
Can't quit.
Absolutely, totally with you, Andy. I can't ever pronounce this guy's name. Tom
Hoge.
Hoge. Sorry, I just Hoge. Yeah. Don't mess my head, JD. It's Hoge. Okay, he's there to beat Wyndham Clark at 1.79 minus 127. All right, this matchup cannot see the weekend. We happy with that, Jeff.
Yeah,
that's the angle. Yeah, this is a Friday. Cash out.
Yeah, this is a Friday guy.
Yeah, okay.
And to the comment in the chat there about Palmer being a member at Colonial, I'll try to avoid that with. Colonial is right there by Fort Worth, but it is not TCU's home. Although TCU does host a tournament now at Colonial over only the last few years. But yeah, Tom Hoge did go to TCU. If you want to play that angle,
go Frogs, baby.
He played. He played a couple miles from this course, but it was not their home course 10 years ago. I don't know if he actually ever played it. So I'm not going to use the hometown angle. He's from Fargo, North Dakota, baby. Clark. I mean, how many times?
Golf country there,
pride of.
Yeah, that's where you got to play indoor golf about 3 months out of the year for
and
sure.
The Nintendo, you play that as well.
You get in there on the simulator and the Nintendo. But yeah, Clark, have I just faded Clark about every other week here? I mean, I think it's just a Wyndham Clark.
Well, let's be honest about it. Clark, but I mean, Hoge 64 to the PGA, mixed cut at the Byron Nelson and the Wells Fargo and the Valspar. But before that, he was getting top 30 finishes. It's just just someone has to win this matchup, really, don't they?
Yeah, you know what kind of greens we do have up here? We do have bentgrass greens. So hopefully return to a Midwest style course here. And yeah, Clark is just another bomber I'm going to fade. He's top 5 in the world in average driving distance, but he's halfway down the field in strokes gained off the tee. That just says he's hitting the ball a mile and not doing much with it. So, he's an absolute mess when it comes to the accuracy numbers off the tee that I ran. And again, for a guy that hits the ball as far as he does, he should be in good position on second shots. But again, his approach numbers are not good. In fact, they're bottom 15, 20% of this entire field. Even if you start throwing out some of the guys who we don't have a ton of numbers on. So yeah, and Clark just pulls a Clark. He does this thing. He somehow makes the cut and then does the thing we talked about earlier where he finishes 74th. So, just he gets through and does poorly. So hopefully I can get him to miss the cut. Although smaller field, it's going to be tougher to miss the cut here. So truthfully, I just need him to make a mess of himself on the weekend again. And Hoge hopefully is just there playing like he did before he had a little bit of a rough patch here. So, and like you said, before this he played well. I believe Hoge played pretty well at Valero. So he had a nice finish here already in Texas once this year. So I'll lay a little bit more just to fade Wyndham Clark one more time.
All right, like we said, we'll be over Friday, and so one way or the other, you'll either lose, you pay. JD, final one of these matchups: Pat Perez to beat Maverick McNealy. Well, I tell you, there's one guy we haven't posed a lot of time. It's Maverick McNealy and Rob Mark. There's a real theme here. I like all these. 1.93 or minus 108 on Pat Perez here. What's the deal here? He's done well at this course. I know Andy was saying we don't put much stock in that, but he has some bit of form here the last 5 years.
And Perez, we talked about the check cashers. That's basically Perez. He just makes every cut and finishes 55th. That's just kind of what he does. His game is not, he can obviously catch fire. He's a guy who can compete in the fall season, swing season events. He has a couple wins there. But ultimately, he's not going to win this golf tournament, but he makes every cut, right? Yep. I think he's made 6 out of his last 7. I think he's made 8 out of his last 9. That's just kind of where his game is. He doesn't do anything great. He doesn't do anything poorly. He's just kind of an average golfer on the PGA. By PGA Tour standards, obviously, he's way better than average golfer. And McNealy is kind of opposite of that. He misses a lot of cuts. When he does compete this year, he has done really well. He has a 4th and a 2nd. but everything else is just a bag of missed cuts. He's missed 5 of his last 6, 7 of his last 9. So, I expect that to continue. In past of his career, McNealy has really relied on his putting to be able to compete on tour, and that's completely fallen off. We're seeing him lose strokes with the putter. Even when he was an amateur, he was always one of the best putters on tour, and he's just not striking the ball very well at all. So, again, this is just a guy who doesn't seem to have his golf game intact as a whole with McNealy, and the guy in Pat Perez who knows who he is, he knows what he's doing, and it's just very all around solid. I just don't expect McNealy to make this cut. I think the missed cut should continue, and Perez is gonna he's gonna cash another check this week. So really statistically, it's just Pat Perez, who is solid all around, not good at anything, and McNealy, who has relied on the putter, it's gone, and does not strike the ball well enough to be able to compete and make cuts on tour. So that's pretty much where we're at. This is I make Perez just a much bigger favorite. Minus 130 is where I would be looking at this price at, and so I'll go ahead and take the lower number.
Pat Perez gets bank wires on Monday morning a lot more than Maverick McNealy or Wyndham Clark as well. All right, let's do a quick recap of what you guys have covered there before we get to best bets. Andy's top one there. At the start, Morikawa to beat Spieth, 2.09. Back to JD. Horschel to beat Rose, 1.92. Back to Andy. Wallace to beat Ryan Palmer. JD's pick here of Matthew NeSmith to beat Brendan Todd, 2.24. Andy Scotty Scheffler to beat Reed at 2.26. Willie Z for JD to beat Sungjae Im at 1.87. Andy Tom Hoge to beat Wyndham Clark, 1.79. Friday cash out that one. And the last ones we thought Pat Perez beat Maverick McNealy. All right, JD, what's your best bet of that?
NeSmith, the number is completely wrong. It should be absolutely flipped with how well he is, how good he is at striking his irons and how poor Todd is. Again, they're going to both find fairways. Give me the guy who's going to hit it closer all week long.
All right, like at 2.24. Andy, your best bet for the weekend, Matt?
Oh, go Morikawa over Spieth, just based on the number. Like it's one of the better numbers in the market on that, and yeah, I like him a lot in that matchup. I like him to win. I'm just not going to lay an outright that small.
Yeah, 2.09 there for that one. All right, good stuff, gentlemen. Got through it. Colonial. Colonial. Like to say it.
Jack's place next week.
Yeah, there you go. There's some good tournaments coming
it's
up.
Crazy.
There are some good tournaments this time of year.
It is a really good stretch. Normally, after a major, it tends to go downhill, but this is kind of staying at a pretty even course. My thanks to JD. My thanks to Andy. As ever, we'll be back next Tuesday. Check us out on your preferred podcast app, of course, and subscribe. And we're also available on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook. Until then, bye for now.